Let me tell you a story. It's both tragic and freeing. It's about a woman, a young woman, young enough to be naive, to be a part of the world, yet to not know enough about it to be safe. This young woman is excited because she gets to pursue her dreams, going to university, leaving behind the small town to adventure into the mystery that fills her heart with innocence, wonder, passion, and yet she is very naive. She doesn't know enough about the world to know the kinds of choices people make and how those choices have consequences, suffering. This young woman, she's named after her great-grandmother, Eva. Her great-grandmother was a beautiful black woman, fierce, outspoken, tough, and crushed down by the weight of her world. Her world was full of anger, sorrow, and a desire to break free. Her great-grandmother Eva saw her as that breakthrough, as a chance to have the life that she's wanted but couldn't have, because in the times of great-grandmother it was not suitable for a black woman to pursue dreams without the harsh judgments and shame of a society not ready for a black woman to excel beyond the old assumptions, concepts, and beliefs that people grip so tight to. They don't even realize it, that they're gripping to something that creates disconnect and pain in the process. Eva going to university within a city, Knoxville, Tennessee. She gets to see the world, yet Knoxville, Tennessee is not even a glimpse into what the world really is. It's just a little pea hole, not even. Eva, one day, and she's walking to the bus stop from her part-time job as an assistant teacher. It's kind of a part of her university scholarship to work part-time. She's always dreamed of being a teacher. to high schoolers. She catches the eye of a man, an overly eager man, a man who watches very closely, searching for something outside of himself, wanting something, wanting power, and willing to do anything for that power. So walking to the bus stop, it's raining, and she barely catches the bus, and it's almost nighttime as the sun has set early with the gray sky of downpour. And this man sees her, and she glances over at him just for a second. And that's all it takes for him, day after day, to track her routine, to see her from the shadows, going to her bus after her work day. Again and again, he sees her, but this time she never sees him. To her, he doesn't even exist, but to him, she is everything that he's been looking for. So one day, at university, in the middle of the day, she sees this man. At first, she doesn't recognize him, as he's just appearing to be like a professor of a curriculum that she has never crossed paths with. He dresses formal and elegant, and yet she doesn't recognize him. But he notices her. So she looks at him for a second and then hurries off to her building class. But that's all it takes for him to know she's the one that he wants, the one that will feed him power. So his watching of her becomes more vigorous, more desperate to catch eyes with her, and yet she's so naive. She's seen those eyes, and yet she does not know, because she does not pay attention, because she does not know the world and the darkness of the world, what lies underneath the world of dreams. So one day, as she's walking to the same bus stop from a party that's just in the neighborhood, near the university, that's also near the school she works at part-time after classes. And this is the final bus of the evening. And she sees him. And for a moment, she realizes that she's seen him before. But she cannot remember, she cannot recall. So, she asks him, "Have I seen you before?" And he just stares at her. And he says, "Yes, I've seen you before. We've seen each other before." And then she just rides her bus. It seems innocent, seems friendly. His approach, his demeanor. But to him, her words, her gestures, her expression, the way that she moved towards him, was it. He knew in that moment that she spoke to him that she is not only the one, but he's going to take it. He's going to make sure that she feels the same for him. So the next time they see each other at the bus stop, of course, she notices him and they don't really converse because she feels something off. Something's very off. And he tries to communicate to her. He wants her to like him. He wants her to feel something for him. But she does not at all. And that upsets him. She has no interest in wanting to know him, to talk to him. Because though she's naive, she still has an instinct. She still can sense danger like us all. And that avoidance of him causes him to one day, as she's walking on a trail around the university, where there's a little nature area, a little forest, some beautiful lake, and some woods with a trail. And she does this path as in between classes just to relax or to get some fresh air. Sometimes she even meditates out in the field. Sometimes she does homework, take photos. And she's out there on the trail by herself in the midday. And she crosses paths with him. And he appears to just be a casual walker. But she knows. She knows. As he steps up to her, she knows. And the second that their eyes meet, she knows. But she doesn't even have time. Not even a moment. Because what is done is done. He covers her mouth. And she forgets where she is, what she was doing. And her life becomes dramatically different. From a young college kid wanting to become a high school teacher, inspiring to have her own creative writing class, and maybe even be a pioneer of a new way of educating young minds with such vision and such willingness to learn and to serve. Such dreams is all taken away. Eva wakes up days later, but those days feel like weeks, and those weeks feel like months. And she's somewhere that she has no idea. All she knows is that she's in a place, like a mountain, where there's always trees, there's always greenery, but there's never any people, ever. Not even the hint of a person. And she doesn't know if she's still in the US or if she's somewhere else. She wonders, is she in another country? Because the man did not appear to be a US citizen. He had somewhat of an accent. She doesn't know if it's Russian, if he's from Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania. She has no idea. But she could sense the faint accent in him. And his determination that she never really noticed before, being so dreamy, full of so much giving, so much to say and express and to offer to this world. She's living on a compound, and there's other women and there's other men. And it kind of reminds her of an Amish community where everything's self-sufficient. There are no vehicles, there are only horses. Horse carriages. But there's only one horse carriages, and the horses are very few and kept by the men day and night. And the women are all dressed like the 1800s or something. And she is dressed like from the 1800s. And she's the only black woman. The only black woman in the entire compound of women and men. Everybody else is white. And she wonders, why is she here? What is this purpose? What is she to do? What is she to become? She doesn't belong. What is the purpose of this? Everyone seems friendly. Everyone seems polite. And yet inside they're caged. Like a caged bird, told what to do, how to be. And the men, they act very gentlemanlike, lovely. Some are handsome, some are old, some are not attractive at all. And some are hiding in themselves the anger and brutality that they so deeply want to unleash upon the women. And there's more women than men, but the men dominate. They dominate far beyond the women. Because the women are all naive. They're all young, and some are older, like 30s. And some are 40s, where they've been there for so long that they actually support the men in their village. And she's the newest one. The newest one. So this man, he names himself Daniel. And he approaches her after she wakes from a deep sleep in a comfortable bed in somewhat of a cabin, a small house, the fireplace. It's a one room, and there's a tub, a sink. That's pretty much it. And some clothes, but bare minimum. Pretty much nothing. There's some wood for the fire, and there's some food stashed away. And she wakes up to him staring at her. And at first she's aggressive. And yet she can't really feel much. She feels delirious, so worn down, so tired. She wonders, how long has she slept? And he just laughs at her. He's like, you can try to run away, but you will end up lost, and you will end up hungry, cold, all alone, and you will die. She tries to run. She makes it outside the cabin. She goes into the compound to see all the women just attending to the fields and the men just walking around, the animals, the horses, the chicken, the cows. And they all just stare at her for a moment as they pause. She screams for help, help me, and they do nothing. And the men come towards her like a herd of them, walking to her with some fast feet, angry feet. And they surround her, standing there. As she tries to push past them, they push her here, they push her there, pushing her around the circle of men, white men, until she falls in the center. She passes out because of the drugs that are going through her system. So she wakes up the second time. A new day. Maybe a week later, she doesn't know. Maybe a month later, she doesn't know. But she's weaker this time. Much weaker. And she sees Daniel kind of hovering her, acting loving and kind and caring, wanting to attend to her. He gives her a wet wash rag and pats her forehead as she's feverish and sweating profusely. And she has these somewhat cuts on her legs from running, and these somewhat bruises from the men of being violent towards them, and them trying not to hurt her, but because of her hostility, cause bruises from her own sort of violent running and screaming and racing everywhere. She wakes up. Daniel tells her to not do that again. And she's so weak that she can barely even sit up. And she just bows her head to him. And he smiles, feeling powerful, feeling in control. So she begins to build her strength as she becomes more conscious. She becomes more alert of her surroundings. She starts to stand and walk around the bed. Night comes and he builds them a fire. The night is cold, pretty cold, and she starts to wonder the location. It's a cold place, so it must be somewhere north. But how north? Is there snow ever comes here? What month is it? Are we already in winter? Last time she remembered it was just beginning fall. And that night he sleeps beside her. And he doesn't really sleep, he just stares at her. She's so tired from walking and trying to force herself to build up strength, maybe to escape, to get a horse and to go in some direction, north, south, east, west, who knows. And she lays in bed. She faces her back to him, but she can tell he's staring at her. And he stares at her for hours until she falls asleep. And he sort of cuddles her like a husband. She wakes up days later. By now, she's feeling a little stronger. Daniel has food for her, soup, has water. He wants to take her on a walk, so she goes with him, wanting fresh air, feeling confused, confined, delirious, and delusional. So they walk around the compounds, and he shows them the area, revealing the different cabins, the different women, the different men, the different stations where people work and take care of the village. But he affirms to her that no matter where she runs to, she will die out there. She will die alone. She will die no matter how far she walks. And the best thing to do is accept her reality and to do the best she can with what she has now. So Eva pretends, but he knows, Daniel knows that she's pretending. He's very smart. He's a much older man, maybe in his 30s. Yeah, he's much younger than the other men. He's kind of new. But he's all about Eva. And he sort of asks her questions about her, right? Her heritage, her mother, her father, her grandparents. She answers them politely, simply, basically, doesn't really give too much detail, wanting to protect her parents and grandparents, but he assures her that he doesn't want them, he wants her. He has no interest in her parents or grandparents. He's already seen them, he already knows about them, he already has photos of them from his search of her in her private life. He knows their full name, he knows the day they were born, the town, the hour they were born. He knows the jobs they've had, precisely the day that they began and ended each job. But he's very curious about Eva. He's very curious about her being black. But not only black, she's mixed. She's not just an African American. She's also a Native American. And that's what causes him to be very interested. So weeks go on. They're quite strange and awkward as Eva and Daniel don't really talk. Eva starts to build up strength. She takes a bath by herself, goes to the fire and makes herself soup and drinks water and takes walks in the morning and evening by herself. And Daniel gives her space. He doesn't try to force himself upon her or anything. He leaves her alone for a while, for weeks, just letting her be by herself in the cabin, letting her find her routine. As she makes her own food, as she goes to the fields for vegetables or fruit from the greenery. She takes care of herself, she gains health, but she's silent, very quiet. She doesn't talk to anybody, the women, the men. She doesn't even want to understand what's going on. She has no clue. All she knows is that she's supposed to be here, and that she's thankful that it's not worse, that it could be much, much worse. Sometimes she wonders, is she sold? Sometimes she wonders, is this man her husband without her knowing? She wonders, what's the future of this place? And she starts to see children, and the children act like it's normal. She even sees a church. She never goes to service because she thinks that she'll be poisoned in the mind. So she just kind of looks from the window outside. And she screams out help through her eyes, but no one seems to care that she's captive, that she's a slave, that she's owned by someone that she doesn't even know or like. She doesn't even approve of this place. She doesn't even want to be there, forced by her will. Yet they don't care. They're all tamed and obedient, like slaves, weak inside, broken, crushed by the men who seem so powerful, rich, very, very rich. And the women are all like possessions. They're all like a part of a collection of some sorts, of a man's desire. But they all have their own uniqueness. The women are all unique. They're not average women. She can feel in them. They all are extraordinary in some way. I think that's why they're chosen, because they all have some quality that's extraordinary about them. Either it's something they do or they say, or it's their mind. They're not just an average. It's like all these women are from all kinds of places around the planet, yet they're all Caucasian. And yet they all have a similar special quality that makes them different, but yet a part of the same group. So Eva joins the winter. The winter here is not nice at all. It's brutal. It's very brutal. The snow comes. All there is to do is stay inside. Stay inside in the wooden cabins where there's food stashed away. There's plenty of meat from animals. There's plenty of wood that have been stashed away in the wood cellars are prepared for months. And the winter is not too long, but long enough for Eva to realize that she is not going to leave anytime soon. And Daniel begins to return to the cabin in the winter. And the silence between them doesn't bother him. As though he's patient. He's very, very patient. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't even try to get her to talk to him. He just kind of is there, letting her be alone to process her emotions, her feelings. Sometimes she cries and he doesn't comfort her, he just watches. Sometimes she screams, sometimes she's angry. He doesn't do anything, he just kind of observes. Months go on like that in the winter. Eva thinks that she's going to lose her mind, but she keeps feeling her great-grandmother's spirit with her. Because Eva and her great-grandmother have a gift, and that is they both can connect to the deceased. They're mediums. That's her gift. Maybe that's the extraordinary quality that all the women have. They all have the gift. But it's different, yet it's not ordinary. It's not for the average. It belongs to the minority, a select group of people, rare, but very much extraordinary. So she connects with her deceased great-grandmother, Eva, and through the fireplace, through the prayer, in the morning, in the evening, before bed. Her great-grandmother just tells her to be steady, to wait, just to wait. For what? Waiting can be years, decades. So she starts to open up to Daniel. She starts to ask questions. As the winter starts to thaw and spring starts to come and it rains and it starts to become more beautiful outside, she asks him questions. And he answers them correctly, politely, honestly. First question she asks is, what is this place? And he says, it's a small village of men and women that exist together as a family. And to her, Daniel is delusional. And she asks him another question, are all these women taken? And he says yes. Then she asks him, why are these women taken? And he tells her, each woman is special, is a rare woman, a woman that is precious. And she asks him, of course, what is it about these women that make them special? And he says to her, we've never had an African American woman, a colored woman here.
The men have preferred to keep it one race for their own sort of prejudice. However, you are very worthy to be here, just as worthy as these women. And she starts to feel like she's a part of some kind of religious cult or something. And that maybe she'll be sacrificed or forced to have kids, or she'll be here forever for these men, just to pretend to play house, to pretend that they're living in some kind of fantasy world. And Eva thought she was a dreamer, but these men go far beyond living out a dream, living out a fantasy, a perverted one. Insanity everywhere. But Daniel doesn't seem insane. He seems very normal. And she asks him about himself. Who are you? Daniel says that he was once a professor. He taught physics at a university, but he never tells her where. He never tells her anything about location, nothing. And that he's been a single man for a long time. That he's never even had love, a kiss, a romance. And this man is like 38 years old. She doesn't believe him. She thinks that it's just some kind of trap or some kind of weird temptation or his fantasy. But as he starts to talk more, she starts to feel that he's a man that desires love, but has no idea about it. Like he's a child inside, deep inside the layers of his robust masculinity. He has no idea about love, how to give love, how to receive. All he knows is just observing, watching, waiting, wanting. So Eva touches his face, gently, lovingly, kind of like a mother. But he knows she's pretending, so he gently removes it. And he says to her, I can see you. If you hide from me, I will know. You cannot hide. I can read your thoughts. And she starts to wonder, this man can read my thoughts. So she never ever tries to pretend with him. She tries her best to like him. But every time that she tries, he knows, and he tells her. He will not let her touch him, not even to seduce him so that she can get information. Because he's very smart. It's almost like he can read her mind. It's like he has a gift as well. Like he has some kind of mediumship or psychic ability or something. So one day she goes into the Church of Christ, but it's not really a Church of Christ, none that she's ever been to. It's like some New Age church, but not like Scientology. It's something spiritual. Has to do with like mantras and chakras and vibration and sound and some kind of technology of the mind and activating that, where people are working on the gift. She starts to realize that all of these people here are like from the future or something. Like it appears that it's like 1800s, and yet inside this church, which is like a temple, yet a synagogue, yet like a cathedral. She doesn't know it's like Christian, yet it's like Jewish, Islamic. It's an infusion of all these different kind of religions into one, and it's quite strange. Yet it seems so futuristic. It's so full of wisdom. When you walk in, it's like so much wisdom. She wonders, how do these people get it? How do you get that out of this tragic situation of this kidnapping? It's because the women, for some reason, they enjoy it. They feel like it was a blessing. They think that they were chosen by the men, like they were chosen by God to be selected for this place. And the men, they keep talking about the original humans, the original bloodline, and that Eva might be the queen. Full of so much delusion, Eva tries not to think about it, tries not to invest too much thought in their prophecies and in their kind of ideas of the world and end of the world, and how there's not going to be anybody left, and that they're going to be the last sort of repopulating of the earth, and they're going to go to another dimension of earth together in this village, a higher dimension. It just seems so sci-fi. There's like a judgment day, and then there's just like redemption and prayer, and yet Eva doesn't feel like she's free. She feels forced into something that she never even chose. So as a year goes on, Daniel and Eva sleep in the same bed together. He doesn't touch her, she doesn't touch him. It's kind of like an arranged marriage, but enslavement. And Eva does her job well. She listens to what they have to say in the church. She does the practices, she does the meditation, the spirituality. She tends to the fields, the animals. She takes care of the community. She speaks to Daniel casually, nicely. A year and a half becomes 2 years. 2 years. Eva's never left the compound, not even once. She's seen the road, but she's never dared to even step on it. Because she knows the road won't take her home. It will just take her into confusion where she might even lose her mind and end up lost in some kind of dimension. Here, there, who knows, by the talking of these people, filling her mind with this new age type of vocabulary that seems to be of like another planet. And they talk about other planets too. They talk about Sirius A and B and C. They talk about Pleiades and the Lyra and the Vega star. And they talk about extraterrestrials, the good ones, the not so good ones. They talk about the Atlantis, Lemuria, lower dimensions, higher dimensions. They talk about the planetary progression. They talk about the time when the star will die in the system. They talk about what's beyond the system. They talk about the prophecies of what's going to happen on the planet for different groups of people. There's the group that is going to want to stay behind and resist, and there's the group that is going to welcome the vibrational shift. It's like they're all kind of these prophetic visionaries, all of them, mostly the women though. They all are prophetic visionaries, and they write it down. A A lot of them write gospels, a lot of them write prayers, a lot of them document their dreams, their visions, their meditations. All the women have a gift, a very sort of godlike gift, a prophetic gift. And I think that's why they're all chosen, Eva says to herself. The day that she realizes that her great-grandmother also had the same gift, she just never tapped into it herself. So Daniel tells Eva the prophecy of her one day. And this is like a time when summer is kind of moving into fall. And he tells her that when he saw her, he was already searching. And a woman told him to go to the place, Knoxville, Tennessee. So he went there. And when he saw Eva, he knew that was the woman. He knew that she was going to be black or some kind of brown. But he didn't know that she would be so powerful, a spiritual power beyond any of the women here in the village. Yet Eva doesn't even feel like powerful. She feels just ordinary. But he reassures her that in her bloodline, in her DNA, her soul's imprint is very powerful. And he needed it. He wanted it. The village needed it to make the leap into another place. Seems so far-fetched to her. Like it's like sci-fi meets like physics and just like talking about stargates and portals, and it's just all kind of just delusion. She doesn't believe any of it. Being grounded. So 2 years become 4 years. In those 4 years, Eva starts to get a little bit disinterested, a little bit bored of this dream world. It's starting to cause these feelings of not knowing what is real and what is not. Being forced to be with Daniel hasn't made her fall in love with him as he was hoping. They live together like they're married, but the silence for years and years is still just not what she wants and not what he wants. But he still is patient, almost like he knows something that she doesn't. Like he knows that she's going to one day crack under the pressure of his constant watching her. But she does soothe herself with songs, and he listens. And he has already fallen madly in love with her, in this kind of forceful, strange kind of way. He's just waiting for her patiently, like he knows her prophecy or something. But she's firm, like her great-grandmother, fierce, determined, resilient, relentless. She will not give in to this kind of forced situation. She will not be a slave. She has her own free will, her own vision of what she wants to do with her life. So one day, she meets another woman, a woman like her, relentless, resilient. And they start to become friends in the field where they attend to the garden. And they both plan to escape by horse. And this woman has been here since she was about 15. And now she's 25. 10 years she's been to this place. She knows. She knows the way. She knows the changes that have happened. She knows even the secret thoughts of these men. She's seen them come in and out of the compound. And she believes that she knows the way out of it. It's a long distance, but there is a way. So, in the night, when everything was quiet, it's a nice spring day, right before summer gets hot, but not too hot. They take a horse, the horse of Lucy's master, Eva's new friend. And they take the second horse, and they ride all through the night with a light. They ride all the way to the sunrise, and they keep riding. And the road just kind of ends. It doesn't really go anywhere. It ends into the forest, but they navigate by following a star in the sky. Something about this star resonates with them. It leads them. Because Lucy has a gift of her own. She has the gift of direction. But the mountain gets rough. And the direction they thought they had doesn't serve. And Lucy somewhat loses her footing and somewhat sprains an ankle. But Lucy's determined to leave. She says she'd rather die trying. But Eva doesn't want her to die this way. Of an ankle sprain that leaves her alone for animals to find her in this place, this vortex. But very quickly the men are behind them. As soon as the sunrise happened, the moment they left, the night they gone away, the men went searching. It's almost like the men knew where they were. Like they just knew. Like some kind of strange connection. Like a telepathic signature that they kind of signal out. And the night gets very cold. And Eva's kind of attending to Lucy's ankle as they're walking on horse. And the men come with their lights and they sort of try to hide. But the men know where they are. And they arrive. And Lucy's master attends to her ankle, puts her on his horse, and runs off back in the direction of the compound. And Eva's partner, Daniel, just sits with her in the darkness, in the cold darkness, where the mountain is high and the mountain just drops off. It's like they're just living in this apex, this tall mountain. And it's not easy to escape from, to just kind of find your way out of. And he just sits with her and he says, if you want to leave, you can die in the woods. And he says it so cold-like. But Eva doesn't say anything, very stubborn. She faces away.
So Daniel takes the horses, his, and he takes hers, and he starts to walk back. And in that moment, Eva sees in the moonlight, as the clouds kind of depart, her great-grandmother, Eva, she tells her to go with him. To go with him. To accept him. And the stubbornness fades. And young Eva, she calls out to Daniel. It's nearly kind of left her. But not really. He was going to camp out there. He was planning to just camp out in the woods with her to make sure that she's safe, to make sure that nothing happens to her in the night. Even giving her blankets and giving her own tent. Sort of, if it's a game or if it's just for fun for him, or he's just too patient. Like he knows that she'll come back to him. So Eva does. She goes up to Daniel in his place that he's sort of tenting at. Not too far away from her. She can still see the light, the lantern light, even at a far distance, as though he's waiting for her. She goes into his tent. For the first time, she looks him in the eyes with the candlelight. And with a full heart, she says to him, "What do you want from me?" And he smiles. He smiles with this joy from ear to ear. These joy lines around his eyes, and it's like he's a teenager and he feels strong and powerful. And he says, "I want you to love me." And Eva looks at him and she doesn't know, she should spit on his face and punch him and so many things that she wants to do as the anger inside her builds up. Forced to love someone, she says to him. And he says, "Sometimes our journey takes us somewhere that isn't necessarily of our free choice." She just laughs at him. And then she just lays beside him with her back turned to him. And they sleep there through the night, and then they walk back on horse to the compound. And weeks go on where Eva just silent. She doesn't do anything, doesn't say anything. All the women look at her and Lucy, kind of like they're traitors. Except Eva now has an interest in learning what really is going on here. That there must be a reason for these prophecies and these spiritual practices and this meditation and this kind of futuristic village. These people are powerful spiritually. They know things psychically. Like they're not from this planet, yet they're very human. So she starts to listen more to the priest, to the priestess, to the healing circles, women gathering, talking about their ancestors, joining in love and friendship, fellowship, and the first time Eva actually starts to feel comfort in these women. They start to tell stories about the stars and the Native American people, the African American people, the great people of different lands, stories of the star beings.
stories of Jesus Christ, the stories of angels and archangels and masters, the stories of the dimensional shift. Now the earth is going to leave the dark age and move into a totally different age. And that the planet Earth, Mother Earth, will need a different type of human. And only this different type of human will survive the changes to come and will be the midwives, the birthers, the leaders of the new world. Except the new world isn't continent. It's something inside, internally. Eva doesn't quite understand what that is, but she's willing to learn. So one day in Healing Circle with these women that are all kind of singing and chanting and just in this love and in this flow and just kind of healing their wounds and, dancing to the stars and to the moons and the sacred fire and the ancestors and connecting to the earth through their bodies, through their voices. Eva sees her great-grandmother in the fire, coming out like this naked woman. But she's not the only one that sees it. There's another woman that sees it as well, someone who may have the same gift as her. And this great-grandmother, Eva, just comes up to her, places a hand on her forehead, and simply just hums a melody. A melody, so beautiful and peaceful. And then just disappears as a gall of wind kind of circles around them so fast that it takes out the fire. Powerful, like a tornado. And Eva wakes up after this kind of experience of sort of passing out or going somewhere else, and all the women are surrounding her. And they tell her she has the mark. Eva wonders, what is this mark? What am I doing? What is going on? Why am I participating in something that just is like, I'm losing my mind? And this mark is the mark of the spiritual guide. Eva doesn't really know what that entails. I have a mark of a spiritual guide. And as Daniel comes to pick her up, take her home, Eva feels lighter. She actually feels love for these women. And though she's the only black woman, has never seen another black person for years, she feels a sense of comfort. Strangely, oddly, yet resistant and kind of confused by it. And then, in the night when she's sleeping, she has this vision of Daniel. But it's not a time of this time. It's a time of another life. And in this dream, she sees Daniel as like they're a part of the same group. They're not lovers, yet they're like siblings, yet they're like friends, like everything. But they're in a group with other people, and they're all like in love with each other, but in a platonic friendship, fellowship way. And they're all in this circle. And in the middle of the circle is like this medicine wheel, very Native American. And Eva walks into the center, opens her arms, and the whole entire vibration shifts. It's subtle. It's like invisible. Like
you can't really see it, but you can feel it. And they're taken away by it. And they're taken to another place. It's like the same place, but it's vibrationally different. And Eva wakes up, looks at Daniel before he even wakes up, which is rare because usually he always wakes up before her, staring at her, always. She just looks at him, face to face, and lying right across from him, looking at his eyes closed as he begins to open them. She says to him, I know what I am. We are all spiritual guides here. We have all come to this earth for a very long time. And you men, you want us because you want our spiritual power. And I don't know if you want to stop us from our mission or if you are trying to help us. And Daniel just kind of comes full awake and he just smiles at her. And he touches her face for the first time in years, ever. And Eva does nothing. She accepts it. So Eva begins to realize as she joins more with the women, becomes one with the women, getting out of her isolation, getting out of just being silent and all by herself in her anger and resentment. And she starts to build up her spiritual power by connecting with these women through ceremony, through prayer, through service, through all the wisdom that these women have to offer. She even gets to sort of be a doula to a woman having a baby. And Eva finds that she becomes like this teacher to young children as 4 years become 6 years. But she still never accepted Daniel. The resentment for him just builds up so much. Nearly just kind of destroys her, makes her very unhappy inside. But there's this one day where she kind of gives in to him. And she holds his hand while they're sitting by the fire and it's becoming winter. And Daniel says to her that I've always loved you and I always will. And Eva says to him, I know that. That's why I'm afraid of you. I don't know what love is for you. If it's control, if it's power. Would you love me if I wasn't this spiritual guide? If I didn't have this spiritual power? That's the question. He doesn't really say anything. So one day in this circle, the women kind of surround Eva and they tell her that she's expected to have a child. And Eva says, is this going to be miraculous conception by God or something? They say no. You are going to have a child with Daniel. And this child is going to be a leader. The leader that will be sent into the world, into a position of power, that will lead people into this new age successfully. Will have enough spiritual power to be able to break through, not for only himself, but for the collective. And the prophecies of these women just get to her head too much. That Eva one day in the middle of the night, just so much frustration, just in the winter too, grabs a horse and just tries to run for it on the horse in the middle of the night. And Daniel wakes up nearly 15 minutes after she's left, knowing that she's left. And he hurries
hurries to get her because he knows that she's in danger. So while Eva is kind of riding horse out there in the darkness with a lantern light, it's cold, Eva gets lost. She doesn't have a strong sense of direction. She gets lost and she gets scared. She gets cold. She starts to feel like maybe there's animals around, hearing things. And there's the moonlight, there's the stars, but it just feels so pitch black. So Eva decides to just sit there and wait until the sunrise, because she can't really see anything. She can't really go back. She doesn't really know where is back. And Daniel comes for her. It's like he knows exactly where she is. And Eva is very cold, very, very cold, sickly, very sickly. And Daniel comes, but there's someone else that comes before him. There's another man that's been watching Eva the whole time. He lives in the compound. He's older. He wants Eva. He's jealous of Eva. He's jealous of her spiritual power. He's jealous of her. And he wants to harm her. He's wanted to for a while, but has never had the opportunity. So Eva thinks that it's Daniel, but no. It's another man. It's an older man, a man that she's seen many times, never really talked to, but he's supposedly one of the elders, the great leaders, the kind of chiefs that created the whole compound. And he's somewhat upset that Eva was even invited in with her black skin and all. He's racist. He's prejudiced. He's this white supremacist. So he tries to rape her, thinking to himself that if this is true, that Eva will have this child, he wants it to be his. He wants it to be his child through his seed, because that's just the type of man he is. Wanting power. He's rich. He's the richest man, millionaire, billionaire, in a weird kind of way. And as he attempts, as Eva's fighting and cold and tired and sick, as she begins to just lay there, as he begins to penetrate, Daniel arrives. Very quickly, Daniel kills the man. Cleanly, effortlessly, with agility, with youth, kills him. Picks up sickly Eva and races back. Because Eva's heart is getting slow. She's dying. She's dying of fever, of sickness from the cold. So he carries her into the cabin. He screams out to the other women, almost through his mind, telepathy. And so many women come gathering into their home, their small cabin. By the fireplace, all the women healers surround Eva, about a dozen or so. And they all do their kind of miraculous touch with plant medicine, and there's smoking sages and these kind of plant sort of scents, and doing some sounds and chanting and some sort of healing magic. And Eva's heart gets very slow, and then gets so slow it almost nearly stops. And then Daniel kind of reaches over her, grabs her face for the first time ever in 6 years, and kisses her forehead. Kisses below her left eye, below her right eye, kisses her chin, her throat, and then kisses her lips and says to her, "It's time to wake up." And with that, Eva's heart begins to get faster and faster till it gets normal enough. Within an hour of sweating, Eva opens her eyes. The women there in the room just patiently waiting, praying, and Daniel there. And she says to him, "I died, and I came back alive because I saw something." She doesn't really explain what that is. And in the bed where they're alone at night, Eva still is somewhat tired and worn down. They fall asleep in each other's eyes, first time ever face to face. And Daniel thinks that Eva's fallen in love with him. And he smiles, even though she cannot speak. She's so tired. And in the morning, Daniel finds Eva in the garden. When she really shouldn't be out in the garden, because there really is no garden. It's winter. But she's just kind of there, like just walking around, like imagining or something. And then she kind of goes back inside. She says to Daniel, "How can I love you if I feel like I'm a slave? Why won't you let me go? Why would you rather me die than to let me go?" And he says, "Your purpose is beyond the average. Your purpose is spiritual. Your purpose is here, and I know it. And I won't let you fall into the fate of the world, be taken away from the world. I knew that either I took you away from the world, or eventually the world will take you without you even knowing it. The world has taken you, enslaved you. I'd rather enslave you here than the world enslave you." For the first time, Eva understood what he meant. And she gently kissed him. Without resentment or anger, with not pretending or hiding or faking, or she kissed him because she knew what he meant. She knew that the world out there is full of so much slavery without even people knowing it. It's in the mind. And though to be a slave here with him, bound to this place with these men, seems quite ridiculous. Brainwashing. But it's like you have to pick your brainwashing, she thinks to herself. Because the world will brainwash you. Propaganda and whatever agenda, politically. It's no different from him brainwashing her into this life that she's supposed to lead or live in. There's no harm in her heart. It's freeing, yet it's kind of tragic, because it's like there's no way out. So Eva, she tries not to, but she does. She falls in love with
Daniel. Not in a way of like forcing herself, but in a way of death brought in something new into her eyes, her thoughts, her vision. And she thought of fulfilling the prophecy of having a son with him, doing that deed. But she, too stubborn, too prideful to ever let someone else control her future. But there's this one night where she just decides to connect with him, trying to feel something, love in a natural way. And she just holds him, embraces him. And then he kisses her slowly. And then he lays down. And he doesn't initiate anything. He just kind of assumes they're going to go back to sleep. Right? As they always do. Sleep. Not really doing anything. Touching nothing of that order. And he turns his back to her in the bed. As he thinks it's just a normal night. 6 years of them just laying in bed. Not really talking or touching. And she touches him. And he leans over, shockingly surprised. Wide-eyed, full of wonder. And she says to him, I want you to embrace me. The first time in 6 years, ever. And he does. And in that night, they make love. She doesn't know if it's real, if she's been brainwashed in the morning. But the whole thing is confusing to her. But what is she going to do? There's nothing she really can do. And then Eva, weeks later, finds out that she's with child. Of course, as the women, the spiritual guides are always right. And it's supposedly a boy, a leader, a light-skinned boy. And what happens is Eva's pregnancy is not normal at all. It's almost like the fetus child is not normal. She will die. She needs a special care. So Daniel kind of blindfolds her, puts her to sleep, and takes her somewhere else. Takes her to a hospital, right, they have the right equipment for her. And in this hospital, it's just like an average hospital. And Eva kind of looks around to see what place she's at. What country is this in? People are worried that she doesn't know where she's at, what country or what town. She doesn't even know what day it is. She delivers a light-skinned boy. And the doctor, a man, it's the first black man she's seen in years. And he looks at her, kind of worried like, because he's never seen her before. He doesn't know where she comes from, or she doesn't even really know where she is, or she doesn't even really have a license or a home or location, job. And Eva kind of figures out that she's not in the US, she's somewhere else, in another country, north somewhere. The small hospital saves her and her child from this death. And Daniel kind of broke the rule, because no person is ever allowed to leave the compound, ever. It's for the secrecy, and it's also to protect the space.
But Daniel decides to break the rule. But
it's like they can never go back to the compound. Ever. They can never go back there again. For the first time, Eva actually found the compound, the place to be her home. But they can never go back. And shockingly, as the child turns near 8 months, as time goes on and they live in a place, a small place, that's somewhat remote, yet Eva doesn't really know where she is, or she doesn't want to know, because she wants to go back to the compound. And the more that she knows, the less likely it is, because the women there were like her friends. And Daniel says to Eva, that they can only go back to the compound if Eva and Daniel are to be married. And Eva agrees, of course. But then something happens. Where the men of the compound get very angry that Eva has this son. They feel threatened by the power of this child. Because Daniel's very wealthy, and that boy is very wealthy as well. They feel a sense of competition with this boy. So they decide never to go back, because the boy will maybe even be killed by one of the jealous men. So they decide to help the child grow in an area remote, and help the child fulfill its prophecy. A young black leader with a destiny of his own, controlled by the universe. A spiritual guide of the subtle light, but creates real change. But it's like invisible initially. But when you feel into it, it has a future. It has a future of real, tangible change. So this is the story. The story of controlled destiny.